Hi, welcome to Samjamguitar. In this second video, we'll be expanding on everything learned in video number 1 and bringing a new chord into the mix. Let's get into it. By this stage, you should be feeling slightly more comfortable with the first two chords learnt in lesson 1, E minor and A, and you're probably thinking, well, where do I move from here? So let's introduce a new chord, D. Before we continue, let's have a quick recap on how to read a chord diagram. So once again, the vertical lines running from top to bottom are our 6 strings, going from E to E. So E, A, D, G, B, E, and the horizontal lines are our frets. In this case, we're only using frets 1, 2, and 3. The dots inside this diagram describe where to put the fingers. So in this case, we have a circle with 1 in it. That's telling us to use our first finger. There's a dot with 2 in it. That's telling us to use our second finger. And then dot with 3 in. So we're going to use the third finger as well. So let's start with finger number 1. Finger number 1 is going to be on our G string. So that's E, A, D, G on the 2nd fret. Finger number 2 is going to be on our high E string. That's our thinnest one. 2nd fret. So E, A, D, G, B, E. That's our thinnest string. And it's on 2nd fret right beside the other one. Now let's move on to our third finger. Finger 1, 2, 3. We're going to place this on the B string, 3rd fret. So E, A, D, G, B. And that should be on the 3rd fret between these two. So you should be left with what looks like a triangular shaped chord using your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd fingers. Let's give it a play. So at this stage, if you've got any issues with this chord at all, such as buzzes or dead notes, we're going to have a quick look at that as well. I'd say the best way of doing this is picking each of the strings one by one and making sure they're all coming through okay. So in this case, if you look at the chord diagram, something that we haven't mentioned yet are the X's and the zeros, or the O's, above certain strings. From left to right, your big E string has got an X above it. That means we don't include this in the chord. We're not going to play that. The A string also has an X, so we don't want to play that either. But if you notice, the D string has a 0 above it, or an O. That really stands for open string. An open string on the guitar is when you play a string even though you've not got a finger actually placed down on a fret. So in this case, we're playing the D string, but there's no finger on the D string. So we're going to include the open string plus the 3 fretted notes from fingers 1, 2, and 3 all together to make our chord. If I did introduce the other 2 notes that we're not supposed to play, it just muddies everything up a bit. Listen to this. So you've got these notes ringing out, and we don't really want that. Okay, next thing, let's start from the D string, picking each note individually and making sure that they're all coming through strong. So we'll start with our open D string. And if that's okay, move on. If that one's coming out a bit buzzy or dead, you just need to apply a bit more pressure, so squeeze tighter with your 1st finger. Let's move on to our 3rd finger, which is on the B string. Make sure all your fingers are on the tips, and you should also have a nice bend in your finger, like this. Each one should be bending, not quite at a 90-degree angle, but enough that you can get the fingertips pushed down fairly snug. You don't want to be playing on the flats of your fingers too much, because what's going to happen is you're going to find it harder to apply pressure, and also these fingers are going to get in the way of other strings, and you need a bit more clearance, so make sure your fingers are right on the tips. Okay, let's move on to the last string. This note on the high E string that you're playing with your 2nd finger is probably the hardest one to get out, and that's because this 3rd finger on the B string here, if it leans slightly too much to one side, i.e. on top of your E string or touching your E string, you're not going to hear the note because this finger is going to be concealing it. So you're going to have to make sure that the angle of your wrist and the finger placement is on the tip so that you're not getting in the way of the high E string. If that's not coming out clearly straight away, don't worry, it will. You just need to practice a bit more and persevere. Definitely don't let the sound of a chord, if it's not perfect, put you off from actually playing it and putting it into practice. That will come. What's important is that you know the chord shape and you can switch between different chords in time, which is what we're going to move on to next. And just a quick reminder, if you're new here and you're getting something from this lesson, then please like and subscribe below. Let's move on. So if you've been following from lesson 1, by now you should have 3 chords. You should have E minor, which is our 2-finger chord, fingers 1 and 2 on the A string and D string. You should also have A, which is our 3-finger chord on the D string, G string, and B string, 2nd fret. You should also notice on this A chord that there is an X above our E string, so try and avoid playing that one if you can, but it's not the end of the world if you accidentally hit it, that's fine. Again, it's more important that you play the right shape and you're in time when switching between chords. Okay, and finally, you should have your D chord. So we've got an E minor, our A, and our D. Now, although you've got 3 chords, I wouldn't suggest changing between all 3 just yet. What we want to try and do is switch to the closest chord that we know with the least amount of movement. In this case, it's an A chord. So let's switch between a D and an A chord. To do this, again, we've got 2 rhythms so far. So you can go with your just standard down on every single beat of the bar. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you could use your more advanced rhythm, which is our down, down, up. So that's down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Either or, whichever works for you. Soon in up-and-coming lessons, I'll show you a more advanced rhythm once you're comfortable with these 2. We'll maybe leave that for lesson 3 though. Now, a little trick that might help switch between the D and the A chord is paying attention to your 3rd finger. In your D chord, your 3rd finger's on the B string, 3rd fret. And in the A chord, let's switch, it's on the B string, so the same string, but on the 2nd fret. So when switching between these chords, you don't actually have to take this finger off. You could just slide it. So you keep the pressure down and just move between fret 2 and fret 3 without actually leaping your finger off between chord changes. So if you try this enough times, especially slowly, your finger should just stay down and almost give you like an anchor for the rest of the fingers to work around, and that'll make your changes far quicker and easier. Something like this. And once you find your finger is sliding up and down between fret 2 and fret 3, you can introduce your rhythm again, whether that be the down, 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 or the down, down, up, down, down, up. It's up to you. I'm going to use the down, down, up. And finally, once you get to grips with both of those, I would suggest using all 3 chords. So the way I like to think about this is starting from your easiest chord, your E minor, working your way to the A chord, and then working your way to the D chord, and returning back to A again. So it's almost like stepping stones. We've got an E minor, A, D, back to A, and then we start everything all over again. And that should hopefully start sounding a bit more like music at this stage. Once you've had a good practice with everything so far and you feel you're ready to move on to the next level, feel free to click onto the next video where we'll be learning 2 new chords, A minor and C, and 1 new, more advanced rhythm. And as usual, if you feel you've learned something from this lesson and you'd like to continue with future videos, feel free to like and subscribe below. See you in the next one.